To start this video, I want to share a story. My story, or part of it at least, about something I did when I was about your age in college and struggling to understand an assignment. Don't worry, these won't be one of those kids these days stories the professors like to tell about how my generation is morally superior and in every way better than your generation. Besides, I know this is a false claim. Have you seen the hairstyles from my generation? The clothes we wore in the 80s? Last week in Writing 111, we watched Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's powerful video about the danger of a single story. She addresses the problem of holding on to a monolithic narrative about any one person, arguing that by doing this, we use gross generalizations that flatten the beautiful uniqueness that exists in every one of us. Although she uses examples from her life as a Nigerian, the danger of a single story exists everywhere, including the college classroom. As a professor, I have to remind myself of this danger almost every time I step into the classroom because it's easy to assume that every student who skips my class doesn't care about college, or that every student who arrives unprepared for class is lazy, or that every student who falls asleep in my class spent the previous night playing Fortnite and eating Cheetos, or that every student who plagiarizes, who uses someone else's work without attribution, hopes to con me into a good grade without much effort. There's danger in accepting those single stories about students. I know this because I imagine my professors might have told the same story about me. As an undergraduate, I saw myself as a dumb jock. Staying in college so I could compete in sports, I definitely did not believe myself a scholar. For good reason. I had poor study skills, a short attention span, and an ability to read closely, a limitation that still, to this day, complicates my work. And so in a class when assigned a difficult poem to analyze, I panicked. Time was short, my team was traveling that weekend for a cross-country meet, and I needed to finish my essay before leaving town. But after reading the poem countless times, I still did not get what the poet might be saying at all. Instead of consulting the professor for help or asking classmates for advice or trying to write my way through the problem, I found a book about the poet in the library. This was the days before the internet. And I plagiarized, drawing large swaths of the text from the book and putting them in my essay without citation. I turned the essay in to my professor and blissfully went on my way to the cross-country meet, knowing deep in my gut that I had cheated. In other words, I was not so blissful at all. Still, I did the same process with the next essay assigned a few weeks later, and then with the one after that. When I got an A- in the class, I was relieved. The material had been so difficult, but I was also aware that I hadn't truthfully earned the grade I received. If my professor knew my deceit, she never let on, which leads me to believe that she probably never knew or that she extended to me more grace than I deserved. It would have been easy for her to assume that I was lazy or a liar, that I didn't care about college or a class, maybe even that I was stupid. I know the single story about a plagiarizing student. The real story, the complex story, is that I was overwhelmed, tired, desperate, and honestly didn't really believe I belonged in college at all. And I wanted desperately to be there, even in that professor's class. She was my favorite professor, to be honest, which made my deceit even more complicated. I'm not telling you the story as permission to plagiarize when you are tired or desperate. Far from it. Even though this happened a few decades ago, even though academics finally caught fire with me and I excelled at receiving my PhD in writing, even though I've never plagiarized again, even though I've written 5 books, even all those good things happened after that semester, I still feel badly about being dishonest, especially as the professor is someone I see on the regular. My deception back then still makes me worried that I am an imposter, that I don't really belong at college teaching writing. In other words, plagiarism can have long-term consequences, as can other forms of academic dishonesty, cheating on tests, recycling essays you've written for other classes, lying to your professor about why your project is 3 weeks late. When you act without integrity, you are not only hurting your professor by being deceptive, You are also hurting yourself, circumventing the opportunity to learn something new, forgoing the challenge to write a hard essay, giving up the chance to strengthen your mind, a chance for which you're currently paying thousands of pounds, thousands of dollars. You've already heard a lot this semester about character formation in this and in other general education courses. Having integrity in college and beyond is an important part of being a well-formed person, and your time at George Fox will give you plenty of challenges to your integrity, intellectual and otherwise. Telling the truth to your professors, your peers, and your roommate is vital to academic integrity, even when the truth might cost you. Even when that truth won't seem to cost you anything. But I want to talk for a moment about how integrity might relate to your work as a writer and to the character trait at the center of this writing class, patience. Because fundamentally, impatience in your writing process can directly affect your ability to have integrity in your writing. My experience as a student is instructive here. If I had decided to take time and to seek out help from my professor or learning center consultant when I didn't understand the assignment, I might have learned the skills I needed to comprehend the poem's meaning on my own. If I had given myself more time to write my paper, extending the writing process as we've discussed, I could have patiently puzzled through the barriers I faced as a writer. If I was patient with myself and the limitations of my knowledge at that moment, my heart and mind might have been more willing to talk with my professor in her office, seeking help for an assignment I didn't understand but thought I should. When we are impatient with ourselves, with our writing, with an assignment, with our limitations, we can be more easily tempted by the siren song of plagiarism and cheating and academic dishonesty. There will almost always be a quick shortcut to a finishing line, a way to cut corners to get through an assignment and on to other, better activities. I hope, though, that you will take a more challenging route to completing your projects, even when that will require that you have the courage to be patient. A single story will tell you that cutting corners will be less painful, that it will be more fulfilling. The truth is more complex. You might wonder what happened to that plagiarizing student, how she got from copying information in books without citation to becoming an English professor. That story is long, but it is also a story about patience intertwined with my story about cheating. After that semester, when I lifted passages from the library's books, I took another class with that professor, then another class, and then another. Her grace, perhaps unknowingly, extended to me for a semester of cheating, made me want to emulate her in my vocation. Her classes helped me develop the patience to study literature with more depth than I ever had before. By the time I graduated, I no longer identified as a dumb jock, but as someone with the potential to be a scholar. The single story I'd long told myself had changed, and for that I was and am exceedingly grateful.